Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second Jumpstart Wilmington Developer Network event. I am Deanna Sargent, and I'm Vice President of Community Development at SENER, and we appreciate you joining us for this evening. I think I see everyone in the room. I know them, so it's great to see you all. As a friendly reminder, please make sure to mute your phone or listening device unless speaking. As many of you know, the purpose of the Jumpstart Wilmington program is to promote the growth of local developer capacity through training and development to support neighborhood revitalization and community development solutions. The quarterly Developer Network Events is a companion piece to our Jumpstart Wilmington program. These network events are designed to facilitate relationship building and foster networks and partnerships between Jumpstart Wilmington program participants and members of the development community. When we initially envisioned the developer networking events, we thought we would be meeting in person and would be able to engage in some traditional networking. Obviously, we had to move this to a virtual environment due to COVID, but wanted to keep the momentum of our Jumpstart Wilmington initiative going. So we hope you find some value in the event tonight and will join us for future events. And we also hope that by the end of this year, we will be able to hold these events in person. Just as an FYI and a reminder, for those of you who indicated in your registration that we can share your contact information, we will be sending out the contact list following the event in case there is someone you met during the small group networking session or someone you hear from this evening that you would like to follow up with. So our agenda for the rest of this evening is a community revitalization overview and precursor to our panel conversation given by Roger Hesketh, who is from the University of Delaware Center for Community Research and Service, followed by our community revitalization panel conversation featuring Logan Herring, Sarah Lester, and Laura Samaroff, followed by our closeout. I'd now like to turn it over to Roger Hesketh for a brief presentation before our panel conversation. Roger?
Thank you, Deanna. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger. Hopefully you can hear me now. As Deanna said, I'm with the University of Delaware Center for Community Research and Service. We're in the Biden School of Public Policy and Administration. We have been helping out with Jumpstart Wilmington, providing program administration, working alongside Deanna and her team with SENER. And in my job over the last several years, one of my roles has been working in supporting community planning efforts and providing technical assistance and training and some coaching to those local initiatives and organizations. So my job tonight is that I am going to be sort of setting up the panel and providing a bit of a primer or introduction to some terminology that you may not be familiar with. I am assuming that most folks here do not have a background in community development, but if you do, I apologize. So one of the things that you may hear tonight as we move on to the panel is references to comprehensive place-based community development. And we can kind of, sometimes you hear this together, sometimes you hear it in pieces, sometimes you just hear the comprehensive piece, sometimes the place-based piece. But if you hear these words, I just wanted to provide a couple quick definitions. Place-based is basically what it sounds like. When we talk about place-based community development, we're talking about creating sustained improvements to quality of life for the residents of a geographic place or community. And so this is a little bit of a different way of looking at the work we do in communities than all organizations tend to have. And one of the ways we can differentiate this between other types of services provided to communities is that the focus is on the place or the population of people that live there, rather than on an individual or trying to address a single issue. And then the comprehensive part. So when we talk about comprehensive community development, what we're talking about is holistic approaches to address a wide range of complex and interrelated issues. So what that means is that you have physical, social, economic, structural elements of what goes into making a community successful and strong. And in order to make improvements to the quality of life in a community, you have to address those all together. And one thing may relate to another, and so it is very complex in that, for example, we know that educational outcomes have a relationship to socioeconomic, the family, the incomes that family bring in, and the educational attainment levels of parents. So, Deanna, you can move on to the next slide. So when we're, and still on that topic, when we're talking about comprehensive nature of community development, what you can consider the kind of the wide range of work that needs to be done in community development. It could include housing, infrastructure, and community aesthetics, community safety, education and youth development, parks and public spaces. A lot of those you'll see on this list that says social determinants of health at the top. I'm not going to go in too much depth about the social determinants of health, but essentially what they're saying is health outcomes, such as the ones at the bottom: mortality, morbidity, life expectancy. We know now that they are driven more so by these social determinants. So you see them at the top: economic stability, neighborhood and physical environment, education, food, community and social context. Then they are driven by what happens in a clinical health environment. So healthcare itself, essentially. So about 80 to 90% of those health outcomes are actually driven by these social determinants, whereas only about 10 to 20% are driven by clinical care. And so, there's been a lot of research in this area over the last several years, and I think that this is a good kind of set of things that we need to consider in terms of what needs investment in our communities. Deanna, you can go to the next slide. So another concept that I wanted to talk to you about a little bit is equitable development. And so when we're talking about equitable development, we're talking about prioritizing and preserving affordability and increasing community resources in areas of need. And you can actually flip right to the next one. So one of the fundamental questions with equity is who receives the benefit of the development activities that we pursue. You may have seen a variety of different illustrations, kind of illustrating what equity means. There's a very common one where you see children at a fence, and one kid can see over the fence and one can't, and so he's standing on a crate. I chose this one tonight because it addresses community more directly. And so the illustration on the left shows equality. So when the same amount of resources go to a community of higher need and a community of lesser need, it does not have the impact that we wish. And on the right, you see equity. So the community of higher need receives a greater amount of pipelines of resources into that community to promote quality of life and stability. So if we prioritize place over people, people can be neglected or displaced. So equity means channeling more resources to where the need is greater. Deanna, you can go to the next one. So another thing to take into consideration related to the community initiatives that we're going to hear from tonight is that we're very fortunate in Wilmington that we have so many community planning initiatives and community development initiatives, community revitalization initiatives happening right now in the city. And all of them take very careful consideration in terms of how they engage the community in that process. And so what you'll hear is a variety of different approaches tonight, but generally it is a participatory process in which residents play a part in planning and in the implementation of the different strategies that are sought after by these initiatives. The asset or strengths-based approach is basically an alternative. That is basically an alternative to a deficit or needs-based approach, which can be detrimental to citizens or residents in low-income communities. And so the deficit or needs-based approach was essentially what we relied on for quite a while, in which an outside organization or institution would come into a community and perform some kind of a needs assessment and say, okay, what is essentially wrong here and how do we fix it? And an asset or strengths-based approach is more driven by the people in the community and the assets that exist in that community. And assets can be individual assets, such as skills or capacities of people. It can be the physical spaces, the associational life of the organization, the civic life of the community, or it can be the institutions in that are stakeholders in that community. So an asset-based approach, last note I'll make about this is it's all about linking and leveraging those assets and building change upon the capacities that already exist within the community. Go ahead to the next slide, please. Another thing to know about many of these initiatives is that we've learned over time is that having an organization serving as what sometimes we call a backbone organization or an anchor institution, or there's all kinds of different terms out there now, quarterback organization. But essentially, they all may, from one community to another, they might play slightly different roles, but generally they are convener, coordinator of the activities. And what we found is that they are a key kind of element to creating sustainability for these initiatives. All right. And they are kind of the connective tissue of all those different activities and programs and projects that happen within the context of a comprehensive community development initiative. All right, go ahead. So now the next part of what I wanted to accomplish is just to give you a little bit of a profile of the city of Wilmington and a little bit of a look at the neighborhoods and communities and different areas of the city that make it up. So the city of Wilmington has about 70,644 people in the city. It's been on the slight decline over the last 10 years or so, but it's remained fairly consistently right around 70,000 people in the city of Wilmington for quite a while. 58% of people in the city are African American, 35% white. 10% are Hispanic, and Hispanic, of course, refers to, or Latino refers to ethnicity, which is different than race. And 61% are of working age, between the ages of 18 to 64. Median household income is $45,000. And I think this is an important one, and I put in the comparison to the state of Delaware in there, where the median income for the state of Delaware is $68,287. There are 28,806 households in the city of Wilmington. 43% of those households own their own home, and there are 34,084 housing units. So there's more housing units than there are households. The unemployment rate as of February 2021 is 10.7. Go ahead to the next slide, please. Now, so this that I've actually taken from Wilmington 2028, comprehensive plan for our city and community. And we have a link to this, and hopefully somebody can put it in the chat box if that's possible in our online resources for Jumpstart Wilmington. You can go through this document. It's a great document. If you're really interested in things like zoning, there's a lot more information about the city and that in there. This shows the different neighborhood analysis areas. I like this map because it kind of breaks the city into manageable chunks, and it also corresponds pretty nicely with some of the neighborhood initiatives, these areas. So I think if you start hitting the advance button, we'll have some things pop up on this slide. There we go. So the purple stars, if you can just stop there, the purple stars are actually represent our panelists tonight. These are the areas that they're working in. So West Side, West Center City, and Prices Run Riverside. And then go ahead, you can keep, and then these green stars are some of the other planning initiatives, community development initiatives that are currently happening in Wilmington. So we have a lot going on. And then the red circles over the next few slides, which I'll go through very quickly, are just kind of the areas of the city that I'm going to zoom in on for these maps. So this map shows median household income, and you can see the neighborhoods if you look closely. So towards the left side in that red or orangey box, we have West Side, and in that is Little Italy, Cool Spring, Hilltop. Those are three of the neighborhoods there. And then West Center City is adjacent to it on the other side of 95. And over to the right, you can see the east side of Wilmington. The white areas in this slide are all areas that the median household income is under $40,000. And the household income is greater than $90,000 in the darkest areas on the map. So I wanted to share these slides because it shows that Wilmington is not just this homogeneous place, and even in the communities that have initiatives, there is a lot of socioeconomic diversity. Go ahead to the next one. And this is the same median household income, but it shows the north part of the city, on the north side of the Brandywine River, which runs along the bottom from left to right. So you see the Triangle neighborhood, 9th Ward neighborhood, and all over to the right, you see Riverside. Okay, we've only got another minute or two, so I'm going to try to wrap it up quickly. So this one shows percentage of families in poverty. Again, darker is a higher level of poverty. Hilltop down here. Go ahead through them pretty quickly, Deanna. So next, same one, families in poverty, median home value. So the home values in the darkest areas on this map are over $375,000, while the lightest areas are under $100,000. Keep going down. Same one for the north part of the city. Next one. And this is where the people of color live in the city, or there's a higher percentage of people of color. And so the dark purple areas are where there is over almost 70% or greater population percentage of people of color. Go ahead to the next one. All right, and a few challenges I just wanted to reference are that as we move into the panel, making and measuring a large-scale impact is a real challenge. These indicators that I just shared with you in the maps don't really change that much generally over time. You will see them change in some specific areas, but generally over the last 20 years or so, they've remained fairly consistent. So it doesn't necessarily highlight, the progress that we're making in our communities. There's definitely an insufficient level of investment and the full range of strategies. Back to that slide I showed you with the pipelines. We need more flowing through those pipelines to achieve real equity. The disinvestment and residential segregation that exists now and has existed for many years historically, going back at least 100 and more years, has created a legacy that marginalizes and disadvantages communities of colors and concentrates poverty and locks communities into cycles. There's a lack of coordination and alignment across sectors and institutional stakeholders. And so that results in kind of a fragmented system to produce the desired outcomes that we hope to achieve, and kind of a slow trickle of resources rather than the continual flow that we would like to see. And lastly, I just want to make a few points really quickly. I don't want to end on kind of a dour note, but I want to lead up to the panel, which the panel will be speaking about the many accomplishments that they have made in their communities and the positive trends that they're seeing. And I've been working in these communities for 10 to 15 years now. And one thing I've learned is that this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And these initiatives that we have, you know, I think the oldest one being represented tonight is a little over 10 years old. So that is actually a relatively short time. But over this last 10 years, these initiatives in the city of Wilmington have had an enormous impact on decision makers in Wilmington, and people are looking to them more and more. There's been many positive stories coming out every day about new job training programs, new parks being renovated, people creating space for youth empowerment, and more positive stories emerge all the time. Organizations and people are working together more effectively, more strategically than they were before the last 10 years, and seeing the work through a new lens of kind of with more of a place-based comprehensive orientation to the work. So there's more avenues for the residents, and there's more avenues for residents to engage with their communities than there were before. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the panelists. They're going to highlight the progress that they are making in their communities. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you for that precursor to our panel. So next, we are excited to have our panel conversation with some exceptional individuals leading comprehensive community development initiatives in Wilmington neighborhoods. As part of our as part of our Jumpstart Wilmington program, we hope that these are some neighborhoods our program graduates will focus their development in conjunction with working with the community and organizations like the ones you are going to hear from. So without further ado, let's begin the conversation with our featured speakers for the evening. Tonight we have with us Logan Heron, who is the CEO of Reach Riverside, Kingswood Community Center, and The Warehouse. We also have Sarah Lester, who is the president and CEO of Cornerstone West CDC, and she also leads the Westside Grows Together initiative. And last but not least, we have Laura Simmeroth, who is the director of placemaking for the Wilmington Alliance. So I will stop sharing my screen so that our speakers can hopefully be spotlighted. Again, we have a very intimate crowd with us, so it's really great to see all of your faces. If you can turn your video on, please do. But our panelists get the opportunity to see some of the people who have actually gone through and completed our program to date. That's Brandon and Yamina. And then we have some future graduates of our program, Dan Young, Kyle McLaughlin, and ABC. She likes to go by ABC. We have 36 people who have gone through our program to date, and an additional 60 more who will go through our program by the end of this year. So we really hope that we're building up some developers who are going to be working alongside you, Logan, Laura, and Sarah. So let's jump into our first panel conversation question. And again, we want this to be a conversation. So we'd like for each of you panelists to just take about 3 to 5 minutes to introduce yourself, talk about the organization you represent, and provide us with a quick overview of your place-based initiatives, including a brief history of your overarching goals. So we'll start with you, Logan.
Thanks, Deanna, and good evening, everyone. Deanna, I appreciate the equity that you're displaying now by allowing the man to go first. Women first. So, and it's good to see a lot of familiar faces and names. So I feel right at home here on the Zoom tonight. Again, yeah, I'm Logan Herring, CEO of what we call the work group, the Warehouse, Reach Riverside, and Kingswood Community Center. I started my work in the Riverside neighborhood in the beginning of 2016 to turn around Kingswood as it was about to go out of business due to mismanagement by previous leadership. My colleague Dave Ford, who's on the Zoom with me, who many of you know, he likes to joke and say he carries my bag around town, but he actually carries the bag around town because he's our chief financial strategist. And it took us about 2 years to stabilize Kingswood, and we used Kingswood as the foundation to help build and catalyze the growth of Reach Riverside and the warehouse. Reach Riverside is overseeing a $250 million holistic place-based revitalization effort underneath of the purpose-built communities model, which includes 3 pillars: high quality mixed income housing, cradle to college and career pipeline, and community health and wellness, which is why we call ourselves Reach, Redevelopment, Education, and Community Health. It includes up to 600 high quality mixed income homes that we are currently building. We are underway on our first phase, but we will be building 141 homes over the next 3 years. We are the first project in the state of Delaware to secure back-to-back 9% low-income housing tax credits that allow us to build those first 141 homes. It totally is it's an 8-phase project, so it's going to take some time to complete the entire thing. Included with the housing, we are also fundraising now to build what you see in my background, which is a $30 million, 70,000 square foot new Kingswood Community Center that will have all the bells and whistles, including a state-of-the-art early learning academy. And then last but not least is our sexy nonprofit, The Warehouse, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It is revolutionizing teen engagement. We have taken the former Prestige Academy building, put $3 million of renovations into it, and are working to address the needs of the teens in the city of Wilmington. So collectively, $250 million, 131 employees, including now 60 teens that we employ. And by the end of this year, we will be employing 125 teens. Our tagline at the warehouse is for teens by teens. Our tagline at Reach Riverside is with the community, for the community. And our mission at Kingswood is to empower the community to reach its full potential. So glad to be with you here tonight, and I'll get more into details as we go forward. And shout out to Deanna, one of my board members at Reach Riverside. And my #1 social media fan, Mimi.
Thanks, Logan. Laura?
Wow, I feel really set up going after Logan. That's just like not fair, and not fair at all. So shout out to you guys for doing amazing, great work that just continues and builds. And I'm just noticing too, behind you is on that new proposed building, the mural lives. And I'll talk a little more about that, during the rest of the presentation. So nice to meet everyone. My name is Laura Semmelroth, and I'm the Director of Creative Placemaking for Wilmington Alliance. That's a big title for a kind of crazy job, and I try to live up to it every day. So back in 2013-14, then Wilmington Renaissance did a plan with the community for the Creative District, which is the area between 4th and 9th Market in Washington. And then I was brought on in about 2015 to implement the plan. So that's what I've been doing for the past 6 years, is really just taking that plan and bringing all the sort of physical infrastructure type projects to life, and then adding into it some entrepreneurial support projects. And I'll tell you a little bit about those. So one of the first things we did, besides working with the community, going back out, standing on street corners, talking to people, seeing what really people wanted and what they wanted to see come from that plan. Like all plans and all planners and all community development planning processes, I kind of felt like time had lapsed, right? There had been a year, there had been 6 months, there had been some time, and I wanted to go back out and say, so we talked about this. You still here? You still on it? You still want it? Is this still important? What happens next? So started that process. And one of the first projects we did was just take a vacant trash strewn lot and made it into a community green space that could be used by everyone. There's a shed on the space that folks share, store things in. There's electric on the lot you can access. There's water on the lot you can access. And we started doing programming there and saying, how are we going to build some community cohesion in this neighborhood? West Center City has amazing people. I love to say it's the most underestimated part of the city. It's really near and dear to my heart, and I'm not even from Wilmington, but started doing the programming there, built from there, moved down the street, went down Catawba Street Alley, did some great mural projects on that block, and then started with a lot that had been a vacant brownfield for about 25 years, remediated that. It is now the 7th and West Street Parks. Same thing, same sheds on the space. We have community organizations that share the shed space and store things in there and do programming. We're bringing it back this year, fortunately. We also have a community garden there. I feel very strongly about community gardens, and I know I'm in good company with both Logan and Sarah on that one. We also did along the way 7 murals across the city, couple in West Center City. We did one with Sarah, we did one with Logan. We're very proud of that work. Those are all done with the community, designed with the community, painted by the community, not on the walls. We do it on cloth and then glue it up there. We don't need anybody falling off scaffolding. So we've done that. We've also brought NextFab to the neighborhood. And that's part of some of the longer term strategies of bringing entrepreneurial support to the neighborhood, because we know there's a lot of folks who are working really hard, really hustling, really have some talents, and they just need places to develop them, right? Whether it's, artists performing in the rock lot in the park, or artists working at NextFab, developing a product, making a thing, learning new skills. So NextFab's there now and going strong. And then this year, we will be finishing up the creative district plan in terms of the physical infrastructure with 2 last projects. One is a kitchen incubator project, the Wilmington Kitchen Collective. That'll be a space for culinary entrepreneurs to be a member, use a commercial kitchen, receive all the supportive services we're putting in place to build culinary businesses. So whether it's baked goods or barbecue sauce or a food truck, they'll be able to use that space as a legal commercial kitchen that they can grow from. And then we are also renovating what was a former liquor store and laundromat at 7th and Washington. This is a pretty exciting project for me, because when I first came to Wilmington, I was like, this is the corner, this is the spot, this is the one, this is where everybody is, and not such great things happen here all the time, so we need to change this around. So the laundromat space will be a community space where there'll be exhibits, workshops, a lot of entrepreneurial training will come out of that space. And then the liquor store is going to be a pop-up retail space. So our entrepreneurs, either from the kitchen or our other programs, will be able to use that space rent-free, try out their product, try out their business, use it as office space if they need to, for probably a 9-month period. And we'll revolve folks through there, and they'll get to see, what they've got and what they can deliver to the community. And that's all in part of our entrepreneurial support programs that we're really, I think, emphasizing right now in West Center City, because we know so much talent is there. And I guess that's pretty much it for right now. Look for this summer, both of those projects will be done and open and ready to go.
Thanks, Laura. Sarah?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Lester. I'm the president and CEO of Cornerstone West CDC. I'm like, I feel out of practice with the explanation of everything that we're doing, but I'll start with, many of you may be familiar with West End Neighborhood House. They've been around for over 136 years, and they're a direct services, social services nonprofit. They do all sorts of great work. Well, Cornerstone was established by a partnership with West End Neighborhood House and St. Francis Hospital back in 1999. And so at the time, St. Francis actually had an extensive network of properties. If you know the West Side, you know where St. Francis is. They had a lot of properties that they were looking to convert and develop. And so the two entities created Cornerstone West CDC primarily to be an affordable housing developer. And so since 1999, we've built new or renovated over 300 properties throughout the county, because that is the scope, that is the focus of Cornerstone within our mission, including Speakman Place, if folks are familiar with that project up in the Northeast. We do homeowner repair, new construction, and also we have some rental properties, low-income rental properties in the county as well that we manage. We're currently in the process of completing a development project called Lifelines 3, which is adding 10 units of housing for youth aging out of foster care, as well as a drop-in center for homeless youth. And that is taking place on Douglas Street and 8th Street, really building out the campus of the Lifelines properties that are already in existence, permanent supportive housing and transitional housing. So that's an exciting project. It's probably the very first one that I'm the lead on as far as a construction project. So most days I kind of want to beat my head against a wall. So I think I can relate to maybe some of you who are going through the class. And so as a small to mid-scale developer, we face a lot of challenges in the development space. And I think also opportunities in our ability to partner and navigate, a lot of spaces in the city. So Cornerstone also serves as the backbone to West Side Grows Together. We help facilitate and implement the West Side Revitalization Plan. And so, think about and this is before my time at Cornerstone. I've been here for 5 years, but back in 2008, 2010, with the foreclosure crisis, the housing development work really slowed down. And also, philanthropic efforts to look at the wraparound community economic robust, services picked up. And so we were lucky to be linked with Wells Fargo Regional Foundation. And they're one of the few funders that provides multi-year funding. So they funded our efforts to do a community plan, and Roger was involved at the time. Knocked on 1,000 doors, convened partners and stakeholders from the 5 different neighborhoods that make up the West Side, which Roger touched on in the map: Cool Spring, Tilton Park, Hilltop, the Flats, and Little Italy. And we convened, the West Side Grows Together Steering Committee, developed the plan, and we worked the plan. And we still are working the plan. It's getting up towards year 10 of this 10-year revitalization plan. So I have nightmares, thinking about what's the plan going to be after the 10 years. But a lot of the work we've done really well at accomplishing pieces of the plan. And of course, there's so much more work to be done. So just really quickly, and I think Roger's overview was helpful, and I'll repeat a few things, but our revitalization plan covers parks and gardens, and I will touch base on that a little bit later with our community playground design project. We still do, as a collective, we look at affordable housing and housing opportunities. We look at community safety. When you survey any community, safety is going to be a very high priority. So we look at how do we approach community policing, different interventions, things like that. Economic development, and that's actually what I started out doing with Cornerstone, was working with the small businesses on our corridors, and we really think about the commercial and cultural corridors as centerpieces of our neighborhoods and communities. So that's a major focus of our work. And then youth opportunities. And I would say, Cornerstone and West Side Grows Together, we don't do as much with youth, but it's just really important for us to work with the many assets in the West Side and beyond that are youth serving. So how do we connect them? How do we share opportunities? So the steering committee, just real quick, is made up of about 25 organizations, churches, nonprofits, hospitals, and we still meet 5 times a year. And I am looking forward to, sharing a little bit more about what we're doing. And I'll just say that basically, I live in the West Side. I love living, working, riding my bike around town. But I really see my role often as just really how do we improve the quality of life, and how do we make the city a better place. I know it sounds so cheesy, but I'm just like I'm in this like love of Wilmington moment right here. But I'll end there.
Thanks, Sarah. And I noticed that each of you in your intro, you touched on the work that you're doing that supports comprehensive community development, which is very important because that speaks to the social impact that we all want to make in Wilmington communities, which is also a part of the Jumpstart Wilmington philosophy. So we have people who are going through this program who are looking to develop single family housing for home ownership, develop rental housing, develop multifamily housing, some multifamily housing to support vulnerable populations, which is all very great. So for them to get a glimpse into some of the things that you are working on, could each of you highlight one or two projects, past or current, that you feel have been the most successful in transforming and revitalizing your community? We'll start with you, Laura.
Ooh, put me on the spot. Okay. Wow, they're all my babies, so it's hard to pick a favorite, right? Can't pick a favorite kid. I think I have them in categories, so I'll be real quick, but I do think that the removal of a brownfield in the middle of a residential neighborhood is incredibly important. And I think that sometimes that's kind of overlooked in urban situations where we've had hundreds of years of people living, hundreds of years of development, years of demo, and what's left there are contaminants that do affect everything. Real chemicals, real vacancy, real blight. And so getting rid of that brownfield and making a park and a usable space and a green space and a community garden, I think probably rises to the top right now. Because I also think for me, it's part of improving the environment. And I think people forget that, we think of the environment as the country or, somewhere else, right? But the urban environment is so important on so many levels. So I think that's probably my favorite project right now. Most important.
Next, we'll go to Sarah and then Logan.
Yeah, so I just want to add to something Laura said, because then I want to give a different example, because I don't want to, I want to spread out our examples here. But, open space and green space is just really important. And I think it's important when we talk about equitable development and the city of Wilmington. And we had the opportunity back, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, to partner with the Georgia Tech, and they produced a study looking at an analysis of open space in Wilmington and comparing it to comparably sized cities, and then zooming in specific census tracts. And so it was really, we still use that data to this day, but thinking about where is the highest concentration of housing, where's the densest housing in our communities. And if you think about the west side, which is west of 95, you go south, like along 4th Street between 4th and Lancaster. Just imagine driving Lancaster Avenue. I mean, the way that the houses are built and right on the street, there's not space, if you're a family, even if you're not a family, but to be outside, to interact outside. So, I think the numbers were something like the city of Wilmington on average has 6 acres of open space per 1,000 people. But if you look at census tract 22 or 23, which is that area that I'm talking about, it gets down to like 0.27 acres of open space per 1,000 people. So, what Laura's talking about, it's sometimes I think it can be seen as like this touch up or like, beautification effort that maybe doesn't go super deep, but it really does. By converting some space to usable open space or park space, or what we've done is take existing parks that were dilapidated, fenced off, attracting negative activity, and really advocate and push and raise money to make sure that those playgrounds the community deserves top-notch, high-quality, fun, active playgrounds. So that's been a huge focus of our work on the west side, and I think we've been really successful. And it affects the quality of life. It affects the the real estate values, in that neighborhood. So it all connects. So just one other really small example, and it's one I was thinking recently that we haven't talked enough about, is that the only way we get any work done in this field of work is through partnerships. And there's a really great organization, and they might be a resource for some of you who are renovating properties, but they're called the Help Initiative. And they do a variety of things, but they really operate in the energy efficiency space. And I love, you should have them come speak sometime, Deanna, because they always say it starts with a light bulb and boots on the ground, like walking the streets. And so the Help Initiative gets out, and we brought them to Wilmington. They did a lot of work down in Dover, and in the West Side, we over the past year and a half, we've installed 1,000 light bulbs on the front porches and doorsteps of residents. And these light bulbs are the automatic dusk to dawn LED lights. So it's helping folks save on their energy bills, but also looking at improving safety, or helping folks feel safer in the community. And also, we looked at crime data over time to see how those light bulbs could be influencing the location of the kind of criminal activity or reported incidents. And we have seen that the crime has shifted over time. And I know I'm speaking really generally, and if folks want more detail, I can go into it. But I think that's a difficult thing about the work we do. We always are looking at how does it influence crime. And that's really hard because there's just so many factors that go into it. And sometimes I think when I've spoken with our captain of the police in our district, it's not necessarily that you're going to see a net reduction, but you end up shifting crime. And how does that impact communities, and where is that being concentrated? And so I think that's just a really interesting, really important component of our work that we need to make sure we're looking at data around, and how does our work influence those statistics and data points. So the lights are one method. I'm not saying they're going to solve all problems, but we've seen them be very effective on the West Side, and it's a touch point to get a resident's information to then follow up with energy audits inside the home and healthy home assessments inside the home, so that additional resources and repairs can be provided for that individual.
Thanks, Sarah. Logan?
Yes, I have two. I have a bunch, but I'll just start with two. I would say the first one for me is the warehouse. In 3 years, and it actually took 2 and some change maybe, we were able to take it a vision and make it a reality. And I think that proof of concept is important because it shows people what our team and community are capable of doing and achieving. If, similar to what Sarah was talking about, if we truly partner together, the warehouse is a culmination of over 140, 150 partnerships where we don't even do our own programming. We rely on others to provide those services for us. So I think that's important because, that's just a small glimpse of, and a microcosm really of what we're attempting to do and we will do with all of the housing, the new community center, and really revitalizing the entire community of Riverside, which is the most impoverished community in the city of Wilmington, where 70% of our children in our census tract live in poverty. So, I think that's important to highlight that because, again, it's just an example of what we're capable of. The second is the Riverside Relief Fund, which is an effort that we achieved, or an initiative that we undertook last year at the beginning of the pandemic, because we had this great vision of what the community is going to look and feel like in the next 5, 10, or 15 years. But it does us no good if our community couldn't make it past the next 5, 10, or 15 months as the pandemic started. So the goal was to raise $250 per month, or raise enough money to distribute $250 per month to each family in the community for 3 months. Within a matter of a couple of months, we raised $500,000 and distributed $250 to each family in the community for 5 months. Every single family received $1,250. Not only did we did that, we distributed over 400 Chromebooks. We signed people up for GED, Department of Labor, workforce development programming. We set up COVID screening and testing twice a week, and we've been doing that since the beginning of the pandemic with Christiana Care. We moved our census count rate from less than 60% to over 84%, which will be over a $6 million return of federal funding to the state of Delaware. And we distributed 15,000 meals. So, us doing that was not just important to address the basic needs, but what it did was build communal wealth in the neighborhood and establish, one, we're able to get updated contact information. We're able to, call and send texts and email when we might have something to offer in terms of resources, or just building those relationships. So as we continue to revitalize the community, they trust us and they come in and they listen, and we empower them to be a part of this. So those are the two things I just wanted to highlight tonight.
I'm going to throw you another one, Logan, and just ask
Sure.
you to talk about your mixed income housing development project over in the Riverside
Definitely.
community.
Definitely. So we have a mixed income desire to do a third market rate, a third affordable, and then a third deeply subsidized, which is the 30% AMI, average median income and below. Right now, I would say the large majority, if not all of our families in the public housing community of Riverside are, the average median income is less than $10,000. So everyone's at 30% and below. So we have two great components to our project that separate us from a lot of redevelopment projects of low-income communities. One, we can build on vacant land first. So the first 3 phases of housing, we'll be able to build over 200 homes without having to demolish homes. That means that, folks can move from their existing homes into the new homes. But that still doesn't necessarily address the mixed income. That just addresses the displacement. Addressing the mixed income, we're doing that through a new initiative that we're starting this year called Empower, which stands for Economic Mobility Places Ownership Within Everyone's Reach. And what it is a tailored economic mobility support system where we're hiring a multidisciplinary team to work with them, navigational coaches, mentoring on financial literacy, making sure that you address the things that may be barriers. And then once you do that, they can begin to plan for themselves and plan for their families. And we're providing them with all of those supportive services. So everything from economic stability to financial literacy to health and wellness, all the things that we need in life, but too often can't find in one place. And, play that pinball game where we're going from this service center to this service center and so forth and so on. So we're investing $1 million annually on this initiative over the first 3 years to match the first 3 years of construction we've already secured funding for. So really excited to kick this initiative off and to really empower our residents to be self-sufficient and eventually own a home in the new home ownership units that we will building in the future as well.
Thank you, Logan. And it's really important to be intentional about developing mixed income communities because it can bring about a wealth of community resources for a range of people, individuals, and families in various socio and economic status. So kudos. So next question. We're going to talk a little bit more about equitable development. And we've talked about equitable development involving, I apologize for the background noise, place-based strategies, which is developing the environment, developing buildings, developing things, developing real estate, which you all are looking to do. But equitable development is also about developing people, and that's very important, developing our workforce so that people can afford to live in the homes that are being created, purchase the homes, build wealth, build equity by being able to become a homeowner. But what's really critical about the equitable development process is involving the community in the conversation, especially when it comes to developing a community that they've lived in for generations. So for our panelists, often low-income residents, communities of color, immigrants, and other marginalized groups are not able to participate in or receive the benefits of growth and development. What does your organization do to advance equity or bring those populations to the table as you are contemplating developing the communities that you're working in? I'm going to go to Sarah first. Sarah, then Logan, then Laura.
Yeah, so when I thought about this question, I thought about it like both internally as an organization and externally. And I think, externally with our work, it's just, it's like making sure that in every space that we're in, we're aware of who's present and at the table and a decision maker. And I know that as a white woman, I know that I can navigate a lot of spaces, and so it's like really just making sure that I do live on 7th Street, but I've only been here 5 years or 4 years, and my neighbors have been here for decades, and it's how do I listen, right? How do I listen as an individual, but also the work that we're doing? How do we continue to seek feedback and listen to the feedback and incorporate the feedback, and that is what carries and pushes the work forward, and not any one individual or yeah. And so I think it's just making sure that we're out and present and connecting with individuals. There was actually a quote that so there was an article that was recently posted on LinkedIn from someone who used to live in the West Side, and she was writing about Tilton Park and about how she could, it starts off by how she couldn't sleep at night because she kept thinking about this park, and how for like decades the community members who live around it have been asking and demanding and advocating for improvements to this park because it's dilapidated. The equipment's super outdated and it floods. So it's literally unusable for days at a time. Anyway, she wrote this whole article. It's really interesting. I'll try to find a link and put it in the in the chat box. But the quote she provided was from the Reverend Jen Bailey. And it's very simple, but it stuck with me. And it is, relationships move at the speed of trust, and social change moves at the speed of relationships. And that was like, and I think, in development work, in all the facets of the work that I do, that's central. And I attended the Jumpstart program, and I remember very clearly the module when, it was like some little point that your speaker made about like getting pizza for the contractors like once a week. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's such a simple thing to do. And I need to start doing that, So it's just like in every part of the work, like building those relationships, because that is how the work gets done. So I've learned a ton. I think deference is key in the community. I'm not a super religious person, but I end up in lots of spaces, in this work that we do that are, church spaces. And so it's just constantly like listening and lifting up the voices of the members of the community. And then internally, I think there's so much work to be done, needs to be done. And I really like connecting with my peers and learning about best practices. But I believe that as an organization, our staff should reflect the community we serve. We do have a diverse community, meaning, 46% African American, 25% Hispanic. So, my goal in 2020 was making sure that I had a full-time staff person that was fluent in Spanish and was Latina. And so we were able to accomplish that. But it's, it's constantly just making sure we're reflecting and making those improvements internally also.
Thanks, Sarah. Logan?
Yeah, so Sarah used a key word, and that's trust. And I kind of touched on that with the Riverside Relief Fund. But in order to achieve trust, you really have to be inclusive. So, we've been inclusive every step of the way. We've included our residents in the master planning process. We've included them on field trips to different sites that have been developed by our master developer, Penrose. We have residents that are on our board of Reach Riverside. We have residents that are on the board of Kingswood. Our chair of Kingswood Community Center is Ray Rhodes, who grew up in Riverside. Marquivas, who grew up in Riverside from Nerd It Now, is on the board of the warehouse. We recently had a job fair for, the construction work that'll be taking place. So those people working on the site are reflective of the community and include people from the community. We just recently hired at Reach Riverside a director of racial justice and human resources who lived in Riverside for 3 years as a teenager. We just opened up a primary care site inside of Kingswood in partnership with Christiana Care, where everyone will have access to health care right in the very same neighborhood in a trusted entity like Kingswood for all ages. We have community refrigerators, the only 2 in the state of Delaware. The list goes on, but I think another great example is, again, when we look at the warehouse and what we've done there, where our board co-chair is a 17-year-old senior in high school. We have a teen executive committee. We employ way more teens than we do adults. And those teens actually review the adults in terms of evaluate their performance as employees. So really empowering the residents, the community to lead this effort, to determine what they want to see, to determine the architecture in the warehouse, to determine what the new Kingswood is going to look like. We are really empowering the community to make those decisions and be in the front and not in the back.
Thank you, Logan. Laura?
So I'm going to continue the theme of trust because I think that's central. And I always, I think it's trust. I think it's respect. I think it's deference, knowing who you are and where you are in the place. I'm not from Wilmington. I'm not from West Center City. I'm a white woman. It's a whole different ballgame for me than it is for the people that I work with in West Center City, to say it lightly. And I think, one of the things that I always say is, I've been there 6 years and I'm still on the trust curve, right? And I should still be on the trust curve. I should not in any way, shape, or form walk into a neighborhood and tell you all what to do when it's your neighborhood, right? And you shouldn't trust me, right? You should say, no, this is my neighborhood and I'm going to tell you what I need and we're going to have that conversation, right? So that has always been the way I have approached that. And I also think meeting people where they are is super, super important, right? And sort of understanding. I think in our work, and I think, and I'll just shout it out to Logan and Sarah, everybody that I know who works in this space is a super listener. And the only reason why Sarah is successful and Logan is successful is they're listening to the community needs in a deep, deep way and responding in the way that we can bring those resources and we can bring the organizational background that can make those changes and improvements. But I do think that's it. I think it's being on the trust curve, knowing your place, knowing where you are, knowing that you aren't part of a community or are part of a community, but still knowing that you need to listen and learn and you have stuff to learn. Yeah.
Thank you all. When our team was putting together the panelists, one of the things that we all loved about each of you is that you do a great job of engaging the community. And that is something that we talk about throughout the Jumpstart program. So for those who have gone through the program, we've talked about, if you're looking to develop a property or you're working on a property in a neighborhood, knock on the door on that block or even a block away and get to know the neighbors and build that community because it's really important. And as each of these individuals have said, building trust is extremely important. I know that we're nearing the end of our panel, so I just have one final question for you all. How might those who seek to develop real estate, commercial or residential, partner with you or your communities? So I'll go back to Logan, Laura, then Sarah.
Well, perfect, because we're starting another initiative. And if you've done any work with me, you know I love creating acronyms. So our newest initiative is called Restore Real Estate Strategy to Obtain Racial Equity. And what we are putting together is a real estate strategy to obtain racial equity, where we're looking at the entire community, figuring out what parcels of land we would like to acquire and or partner with folks like yourself to develop. So we all have a vision and the same vision for the community. The one thing that we understand in working with purpose-built communities is that we have to get ahead of our success. And we realize that a lot of people are kind of circling around us right now as vultures and saying, how can I come in and take advantage of this community? And we really want people to come in this community to help uplift and empower this community, whether it be from commercial real estate or residential. So I would encourage you all to reach out to me and or Dave Ford, who is on the line as well. It looks like we are lining up our first investor for Restore. We'd like to start a Restore fund to address the commercial retail, to bring a grocery store to the neighborhood, develop some land trusts, an opportunity zone fund. The list is endless. We're also looking for a private developer to build about 35 single family homes on Kingswood's property as well. So if you have any ideas, you have any thoughts, I think most of you have my information, but I'll drop my email into the chat as well. Can we expand Restore citywide? If the money's right, we can expand it as far as you want to go.
What about the partners? If the
Yeah,
partners
bring
are
it
right,
on.
we can raise it.
Bring it on.
Great.
Maybe that's a new project that we all need to partner on, right? Bringing Restore citywide. Plenty of work to do in that space, as we all know. So come on down to West Center City, right? I'm always walking and talking all over the neighborhood and looking for bright folks with new ideas. I mean, I think we do not do real estate development in terms of home ownership, but we are always looking for people to develop opportunities for home ownership because we believe in it so strongly as an organization, and are trying to create pathways for folks to get there for sure through workforce development and entrepreneurship. I will say though that, I have been accused of being very protective of West Center City, right? And I have been accused of being very picky of who I will show around the neighborhood. And I will admit that, yeah, if you're not coming to West Center City with the right intentions and the right mindset and the right respect for that neighborhood, I will make sure you're not there. I think that that is something that when you work in community development for a long time, you have to also learn to be a little protective of neighborhoods. And but I welcome everyone to reach out for sure. And I am a little kidding, just a little on that note. You guys are laughing at me, I see, but yeah.
All right, so folks, y'all could help me with some acronyms for the West Side programs because, because we gotta Logan's raising the bar. It's not a competition; it's just elevation all around. So I need some better acronyms, but that's just number one. I don't know. Everyone's saying the things, reach out to us. I would say too, though, as individuals, and a lot of you are interested in Jumpstart because maybe you live in the city or in specific neighborhoods and you want to invest and develop. And I guess I would just encourage you to enter into spaces. I find that I'm often in a lot of decision-making circles that are very small. And so I'm going to try to bring more folks in too, but the city, it's always like a dance. The work that we do is a bit of a dance. And I just think that, a little bit of conflict and tension and pushing for what we think is right and good for our communities is important. And I just would encourage you all to kind of continue to do that. And I hope that many of you will look to the West Side, as well as all these other great neighborhoods, to make some of your own personal investments or property developments. So there's a lot of opportunity. And I think we should, just continue the conversation. So please, I'll put my email in the chat box too.
Well, thank you to our esteemed panelists. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us, while even if on vacation. Definitely appreciate your time, also your talent, sharing your experience with all of us. I work with each and every one of you and consider you all to be great partners. I definitely have a lot of respect and admiration for you all and the work that you and your team are doing within your organization and the impact that you're making in the community. So thank you for being here and sharing the work that you're doing with our Jumpstart Wilmington family. I like to use the term family. Jumpstart Wilmington is about collaboration. We really try to encourage working in collaboration with each other amongst the cohorts, as well as the community. And I think that really shined through today during your panel conversations, just opportunities for each of you to collaborate with one another to get things done in Wilmington, and that's really important. So thank you to our panelists. I'd like to thank our attendees. Thank you. I see many of the same faces at our Kickstart sessions. And I know that you're going through the program in the future. So thank you for your commitment already to the program. And I know that you all are going to do some great things in Wilmington. And I'm excited to see how the neighborhood is going to change over the next few years for the better, continue to change and grow for the better. So I'd like to also thank our Jumpstart Wilmington team, Roger, Jenny, Mimi, Tamira. Did I miss anyone? I think I captured everyone. Thank you all for your work and helping to constantly put our programming together. And last but not least, we will send you a follow-up thank you email for everyone who attended. You'll have a copy of a link to the recording for this evening, which will include the presentation that Roger shared. We'll also include a survey link. We really appreciate your feedback. The survey takes less than 3 minutes. We're just trying to gauge your experience this evening and how we can better structure these events in the future. Hopefully, we'll be moving to in-person soon. We'll also include the contact information for our panelists tonight in hopes that you'll be able to reach out to them and start discussing opportunities to collaborate on future projects. So that's all I have. That's all we have, our Jumpstart Wilmington team. And again, thank you and have a wonderful evening, everyone. Bye.
I believe everyone. Thank you guys.